The formation of jazz is basically that each and every jazz musician, they need to know the style of jazz that is very prominent and is a very prime source of jazz that is called blues. So now blues is the music that, evolved in the 18th century, and it was popularized by the Africans. So now when we're talking about Africans, we're talking about the Africans who were taken from Africa into America, who became slaveries there. So now the blues was formed in that when they were in field, singing, they were not planning to make a blues sound, but people they had, the white people had to, it's slavery, no, man. It's political. Now, I don't want to mix politics and this thing because now jazz is politics. In short, blues is politics. It's what our forefathers, Africans, they've went through the struggle with. So now it was a black consciousness music that was talking about the struggles. The struggles songs that they sang in the farm when they're doing the plantation, and gospel as well. It evolved from gospel. So now blues has given birth to most of sub-styles of music as such as swing, bebop, fusion. And look, in all the music today, what we have, the R&B and so forth, you hear all the time. All these notes, they're forever there because they're important, they're essential to blues. For someone to play the blues, they will need to understand the form of the notes, the sound of the blues. Now we're going to talk about the sound. What makes the sound of the blues very important is because of this, the 1 and the flat 3. And this was the blues that evolved. It has evolved several times. There was a blues, and then later evolved to blues rock. That's where you get all those folks, the John Lee Hooker. You have the B.B. Kings, and later on, it emerged into swing in the 1930s. Whereby you have great musicians who played blues differently. So now, when we speak about the formation that blues is a prime source of jazz, is that without blues, there wasn't going to be jazz. So it's an expression of political struggles of African American. As we know that each and every language, it has its own articulation and pronunciation. People who speak French, when they speak English, they don't sound like English. And when we speak English, we don't sound like British English, and so forth. So now there's a language that defines jazz, and as I said, that is a prime source. There's a very important aspect of the notes in the blues that we need to learn that is called the blues scale. So the blues scale consists of the 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 7, and 7. So now, when you hear this sound, you know, okay, this is blues. it's like when someone speaks, you know, you could tell where this people that where this particular personnel comes from. So it's the language, and also the articulation of it. It was never as smooth because Africans, they went through struggles. So now it was never a fun music. It was their expression of what they went through politically. You know, it was about expressing the political struggles through music. And so it happens in swing as well. The notes there, they're being, the pastors of swing is sang. Swang, you know, they're swung. So now, when you're talking about swing, the notes there 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 2. 1 2 So the most important syncopations, the rhythms there is 2 and 4. So now that's how we define swing. That is the important aspect of swing. It's on 2 and 4. By default, they did, because this thing, it was in their blood. So now it just happened that they sang this when they were in the States. What inspired this singing of the blues when they were shipped there? It was for them to express the political struggles. I mean, they had gospel, Africans, they had gospel. It's in our blood by default. I can't say that they never had jazz. So jazz is African music. They've documented it. And they claimed it, you know, they've documented it, and then they named, and then they titled it. They said, this one is jazz, this one is ragtime, this one is swing, this one is bebop, this one is hard bop. They come with those titles, but we as blacks, we didn't come with the titling of the genres. So we played, I mean, black people, they played music expressing themselves. But now and then they make an analysis of, okay, this one is, we're going to name it hard bop, we're going to name it blues. And blues, it has several, you know, definitions, and everyone can come with, I mean, to broaden up the explanation of blues. But as far as I know, is a music that it was more about the political struggle of the Negroes in the 18th century. We share the same history with Americans. They went through the oppressions, I mean, the injustices of you know, being oppressed by white people, of course, yes. And we same here, we went through the injustices. We went through political struggles. You must understand that when the time of swing in the States, we had our swing here as well, the Kipi Murulung Meketi and all that. When the hip hop is happening there, is happening in South Africa. So the struggle, we share the same struggle. In relation with the formation of American jazz and South African jazz, we have our blues as well. And our blues is Wonompakanga, because this music is the music that kept the people of South Africa dancing and singing through the social political times of South Africa. So when during those times they meet at the Shebins, you know, and Shebins, it was a joint whereby they will feel free. It's a social gathering. You know, they gather there, Babshire, and they play music to relieve their stress, you know, their daily struggles. So when you're talking about the blues from here, this is what I call the blues. So, it's got same influences that it's very aggressive. It's very aggressive because black people, our fathers, they were tired of being oppressed. So now, when they play the music, they couldn't play love songs. They couldn't. It was not a soft music. It was hard. And it's not only in Patanga. There's so many music. Amahubo. the evolution has occurred in a way that there's so much subgenres into the so-called blues. And someone will say, but Billy, why is he relating blues with Mpaqanga? What about Kwela? What about, there's so much music, but it's our blues, it's our heritage music. When I say that blues is a prime source of music, it's because it's Afro-American music heritage that they need to preserve. That is why today you have John Mayer. Is amazing a blues guitar player, but people, they say it's the R&B is a rhythm and blues. Each and every jazz musician needs to learn the articulation. As much as there's so much subgenres of music, meaning that if you play bebop is different from when you play blues. However, they can also meet because they all influence each other. So now each and every style, it has its own what you call scales, a mode, how the music it was formed. When we talk about articulation, is what I've mentioned, that articulation is the voice that comes from the inner you, from the inner you. I'm talking about the spirit that comes, because each and everyone can play a note. Like Miles Davis said, each and everyone can play a note, but it's only you who can make it, to bring it to life. Everyone can play this. But now if you put this with someone who went through the struggles, and you will articulate this differently. Is the articulation that I'm talking about, and the swing articulation as well. I'm going to just play a little bit of an example so that you can understand that articulation, how much is important. If you play swing, you will think about the 2 and 4, and as well as when you're playing a string instrument, a saxophone, woodwind, you also think about the 2 and 4. So all there in 2 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2. So now you accent the 2 and the 4. That is why that's what defines it. So this is the articulation that I'm talking about. And with jazz evolving, until the 90s, people, they matched the swing and the blues. Some, they started exploring with sounds, multi-effects. They wanted to play some distortion, some rock, some electric. Miles Davis, he was a perfect example, because he changed the whole sound of jazz. The birth of the cool, it was something else. You look at how many musicians, all the great musicians, from the Mike Stern, Marcus Miller, you name them, they come from Miles Davis, because Miles Davis, he was a revolutionary of jazz. So he brought some great sound that defines jazz differently now. That is called fusion. So now, from fusion, what went down from fusion. Then we started having some hip hop, So yeah, that's the formation and the evolution of jazz. jazz is pantula, man. Jazz is salty. At school, you learn the theory. You know what I'm saying? But most of the things I've learned playing with Andile and Pravik Ntoni, the late, I've learned things that I didn't learn at school. But street and school, they come together. But now our forefathers, they never have a privilege to go to school. They used a lot of ear. So now ear and eyes, and the book, they go hand in hand. People, they should not separate a school and the street, because there's a lot in the street, actually. There's a lot in the street, because it starts there in the street. There are things that they are not precisely documented. You only find them in the street. Go to, okay, country this is the one. At school, you find maybe a more diluted version of it. So yes, there's so much that I've learned in the streets than in school. What I learned in the streets is that the pressure, there's no time. What I learned in the streets, I learned South African music actually in the streets. And the jazz that I learned in the streets, it was the jazz repertoire of, the Kipi Murlum Keti. So now, in the streets, you learn to play under pressure. You learn to play under pressure, because that is the reality. That prepares you to be a man. At school, you can still look at the book like that and say, no, we'll reference it to later. And one thing with the streets is the spiritual side of things, because it's not about just playing a note. It's about connecting the spirit and the note, is because music is spiritual. So now in the streets, I've learned the spiritual side of jazz, because everyone can play a note, but it has to be meaningful. It need to touch someone who's sitting there and make sense. What I learned in the street is that it should not be about many notes that to show off that you can play. The discipline that I've learned in the street, that's the one that no. You don't play many notes. Play something that makes sense. Play something that is melodic, something that people, they could relate, that it could be easy to the ear. That's what I learned in the street. In the school, they teach you the notes, how they're arranged, so that you can be able to read music. And there's a good side of it, because there are parts whereby there are people who can't do that gig, but I can do that gig because I can read music. So it's very important. And also the business side of the music, that is another topic for another day, because the school business, the school music business and the street business, they're two different things. The contract, they talk about the contract, that you need to have a contract to sign before a performance and all of that thing. In the streets, you come, you say you want a contract, you lose the gig right there. And then you say that you want to charge 100,000, and then the contract says 100,000, and then the client can decide to say, no, I won't pay you. And what are we going to do? You don't have money for the attorneys, you don't have money for legal fees. By the time you get that money, you have already exhausted it in telephoning and all the logistics. So it's tough. Well, that's the street. The formation of and what makes traditional blues to be in relation with South African blues that I call Mbaqanga, and Sophia Town music, Marabi, and Kwela, and etc. Is that it's formed by 1-4-5 progression. So the original traditional blues is a this is still our 1, and then 4, 1, let's relate this with Sophia Town, with Marabi music. Marabi is related with swing. How related? Because it was the same time whereby blacks, they were facing the social, political, times in America, and we were facing that. So now the swing music has influenced Marabi. That's why it sounds the same. And also, it sounds the same. It sounds the same because now if you play Kwela, speaking about articulation now, when you're talking about the articulation between swing and Kwela, here's the swing. So now people, they're like, it's Kwela. It's different. Kwela is... It's not the same. So now the same applies the 2 and 4. This is how we play Marabi. Is same applies in swing as well, 2 and 4. They're related, but what also is in relation is the articulation as well, because now you have the B.B. Kings, the John Lee Hooker. It's the same thing. You hear a guy from KwaZulu-Natal. The same energy. They're angry. Black people are angry of oppression. I just wish that we are not captured. We can speak about this without having a filter. It's still political, but that thing which we just what do you call it in English? It's just a matter of say, okay, that thing is here. It's boiling in both of us. We are white and we are black, but that's when we're gonna realize we are not one. That's why we're just tolerating each other now, for the sake of business. Usually, actually, no. No. I did a show 2 weeks ago, and these guys, they're white producers, all of them, they're sitting there. And then we black musicians, we are there on stage, we're doing the hard labor, and they're just there running the show, and then they still want to tell us that we are free. We are free, yes, to walk in the streets, but the white people, they're still running the show, bruh.